The Pacific Ocean is a graveyard. It is vast, deep, and usually silent. For a destroyer crew in World War II, hunting a submarine was described as hours of crushing boredom, punctuated by moments of sheer Ray. It was a game of blind man's bluff, played with high explosives. Most ships spent the entire war hunting ghosts, chasing false echoes, whales, or thermal layers. If a ship was lucky, they might sink one submarine in a year. If they were legends, maybe two. But in May 1944, one small ship broke the laws of probability. In a span of just 12 days, the destroyer escort USS England. England didn't just hunt the enemy, she purged them. 6 Japanese submarines destroyed, one after another, and Kate Sapand Tin and a kill streak that has never been matched in the history of naval warfare. But this wasn't just luck. It was effort storm. It was as the perfect storm of a new terrifying weapon. A crew pushed to the brink of exhaustion, and a tactical evolution that turned the hunter into the executioner. I'm your host, and this is WW2 Battlegrounds. Today, we're stepping aboard the USS England for the greatest sub-hunt of all time. To understand how impossible this feat was, we have to look at the board in May 1944. The war in the Pacific was shifting. The United States was preparing for a massive invasion of the Mariana Islands. Passers, there were after victories at Saipan, an operation that would eventually lead to the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The Imperial Japanese Navy knew something was coming, so they set a trap. They established what they called the NA line. Imagine a picket fence of submarines stretching across the ocean north of the Solomon Islands. Their job wasn't to attack the invasion fleet, it was to find it. They were the eyes of the Japanese Navy, waiting to signal the location of the American carriers so the main Japanese fleet could strike. Enter the USS England, designation DE-6 at 35. Now, the England wasn't a glamorous battleship. She was a destroyer escort, a tin can, smaller than a destroyer, slower, and cheaper to build. These ships were the workhorses of the fleet, designed to protect convoys and screen the big boys. But the England had an ace up her sleeve, a weapon that was about to change anti-submarine warfare forever. It was called the Hedgehog. 4 years. The standard way to kill a sub was the depth charge. You rolled a barrel of explosives off the back of your ship. It sank to a preset depth, and boom. The problem, you had to guess the depth, and the explosion was so massive it churned up the water, blinding your own sonar for minutes. It was messy. It was inefficient. The Hedgehog was different. It was a forward-firing mortar located on the bow. It fired 24 projectiles in a circular pattern 200 yards ahead of the ship. But here's the kicker. The projectiles were contact fused. They wouldn't explode unless they actually hit the submarine's hull. If you fired and missed, silence. You could keep tracking the target. But if you heard an explosion, you knew with 100% certainty that you had killed something. On May 18, 1944, American intelligence intercepted a message. They knew where the Japanese submarine line was. And the England, along with two other destroyers, the USS George and the USS Raby, was sent to investigate. The hunt was on. It begins on May 19th. The England sonar operator picks up a sharp, clear contact. It's the Japanese submarine I-16. This was a massive vessel carrying a midget submarine on its deck. Undoubtless, the tasked with running supplies to starving Japanese troops on Bougainville. But today, it was the prey. This engagement set the tone for everything that followed. The England moved in for the attack. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton was calm. After victories, he maneuvered the ship not to drop depth charges from the rear, but to drive right over the target's future position. Picture the tension. In a depth charge attack, you wait for the boom. With Hedgehogs, you wait for nothing. The projectiles hit the water with a splash, then silence. The seconds tick by as they sink. 2, 3, and then a sound that sailors described not as a boom, but as a sickening underwater crunch. Then a rumble. One of the projectiles had struck the I-16. The explosion cracked the pressure hull. A few seconds later, a massive underwater detonation rocked the England as the submarine's own torpedoes or boilers exploded. Debris floated to the surface, cork insulation, deck planking, shredded rice bags, and oil. A slick of heavy fuel oil spreading across the blue water. The crew was ecstatic. They had a confirmed kill on their first run. But what makes this tactically fascinating is the efficiency. They hadn't wasted hours acquiring the target through turbulent water. They had struck with surgical precision. But the England wasn't done. The NA line had more scouts. Most hunting groups would head home after a kill to refuel and rearm. Not this group. They moved down the line. What followed over the next week was a blur of exhaustion and violence that is hard to comprehend. On May 22nd, they found row 106. On May 23rd, row 134. On May 24th, row 116. On May 26th, row 108. It became a grim routine. The sonar ping would sound. The crew, already sleep-deprived, fueled only by coffee and adrenaline, would race to battle stations. Here is where the wolf pack dynamic flipped. Usually, we think of German U-boats hunting convoys in packs. Here, it was 3 American destroyers, England, George, and Raby, hunting lone Japanese submarines. The tactics were brutal. The George or Raby would often spot the sub first and herd it, forcing the Japanese commander to maneuver, to dive deep, to use up his battery power. And then, like a designated executioner, the England would soup hill shot with her Hedgehogs. There was a strange, almost magnetic quality to the England's success. The other ships would make attacks and miss. Their depth charges would detonate wide, but whenever England stepped up to the plate, she didn't miss. Tactically, the Japanese made a fatal error. After victories at Saipan and Fert, they were under strict orders to hold their positions in the scouting line. They were static. That wasn't there yet. While a killer was moving systematically from one station to the next. And by May 26th, the crew of the England was functioning on muscle memory. Load the mortars, the fire, wait for the crunch, confirm the kill, the clean the mortars, and repeat. They were wiping the NA line off the map, one ship at a time. By May 30th, the England was running on fumes. They were low on fuel. The Pred say they were critically low on Hedgehog ammunition. The crew hadn't slept properly in 10 days. But there was one more contact, the 105. This was the hardest fight of them all. The Japanese commander of Row 105 was skilled. He knew he was being hunted. For 24 hours, the three American ships tracked him. George and Raby made multiple attacks, firing their Hedgehogs, dropping depth charges off nothing. The Japanese sub twisted and turned deep underwater, dodging every blow. The frustration on the American ships was palpable. The commanders of the George and Raby were technically senior to Pendon on the England, and they wanted the kill, but they kept missing. Finally, after a long, grueling night, the group commander radioed the England. Go ahead. England. Gugland. Show us how it's done. It was a moment of supreme pressure. The England limited ammunition left. If they missed this run, they might be out of the fight. Pendleton guided the ship in. He anticipated the sub's turn. He fired his pattern. 6 to 10 seconds later, a violent underwater explosion. The Row 105 blew apart. A huge oil slick and debris bubbled to the surface. That was number 6. In 12 days, one destroyer escort had sunk 6 enemy submarines. To put that in perspective, entire task forces often went the whole war without sinking 6 submarines. The NA scouting line was gone. The Japanese eyes were blinded. So why does this matter beyond the scoreboard? Why is this more than just a cool story? First, the technology. The success of the USS England proved the supremacy of the traditional depth charge. Wurftum, herdergenlistisches primifer omvru uthasarenischkrapans, and Prasunmasiden over the traditional depth charge. It shifted anti-submarine warfare from a game of area bombardment to precision striking. The Hedgehog allowed the attacker to maintain contact continuously, the principle that defines modern anti-submarine warfare today. Second, the strategic impact. This is the so what of the episode, because the England destroyed those 6 submarines. The Japanese Navy lost its scouting line. When the U.S. fleet approached the Marianas in June, the Japanese didn't see them coming until it was too late. This blindness forced the Japanese into a reactive, the desperate battle plan that ultimately led to the Battle of the Philippine Sea, so also known as the Great Marianas, Turkey, shoot. The Japanese naval air arm was destroyed in that battle. You can draw a direct line from the England's 12-day patrol to the collapse of Japanese naval power in 1944. Finally, the human factor. It reminds us that war isn't just machines, it's exhaustion. It's the sonar operator staring at a green screen until his eyes burn. It's the loader having 60-pound projectiles on a pitching deck. The victories, George and Raby had the same equipment, but the England had the rhythm, the cohesion, and the leadership to execute. The USS England returned to port a legend. The Navy awarded the ship a Presidential Unit Citation. Commander Pendleton received the Navy Cross on. But perhaps the most telling fact is this: the record still stands. In the history of naval warfare, through the rest of World War II, through the Cold War, and into the modern era, no single ship has ever destroyed 6 submarines in 12 days again. It stands as a testament to a moment where preparation met opportunity, where a tin can destroyer became the most dangerous ship in the Pacific. If you enjoyed this deep dive in to naval history, make sure you're subscribed to WW2 Battlegrounds. We break down the tactics behind the legends. Here's a question for you. The Hedgehog was effective, but dangerous to load and operate. Do you think it was the best anti-submarine warfare weapon of the war? Or does that title belong to the acoustic homing torpedo? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Next time, we're going to the other side of the Pacific War, looking at the desperation of the Chiton suicide torpedoes. And until then, this is WW2 Battlegrounds. Keep your powder dry.